What's going on, gang? Welcome back to the channel. We're back at it with some NBA player props. This time, it's the NBA Finals. We got the Milwaukee Bucks taking on the Phoenix Suns. I'm excited to talk about the 5 player props. We're going to do a deep dive looking at regular season matchups, playoff averages, and we're going to take a look at projections and try to formulate an opinion. Should we be going over? Should we be going under on some of these player props? We're going to get down to the nitty gritty and try to figure out what plays are going to cash for us tonight. So if this is your first time to the channel, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on. After I post this video, well, things can definitely change. Props can go up. Props can be moved down. Things are always moving over on PrizePicks, so it's imperative that you're subscribed and that you have notifications turned on. Now I'm going to set a like goal of 40 likes for this video. The NBA videos in the past, they've gotten 40 or more likes, no problem. So I think we could definitely achieve that. Also, want to mention that this is a fantastic time to join the Patreon community. We've got a great group of guys and girls over there. We're talking everything from NBA to MMA to CSGO to MLB. I mean, really every sport that you can play on PrizePicks, we're dabbling with it. So join the Patreon group. It's just 20 bucks. It helps support me as a creator. If you like these videos, you want me to keep making them. If you want more content, I put out player prop sheets. I do everything that I can in my power to help everyone in the community to cash more over on PrizePicks. I'll leave a link down in the description below for you to join the Patreon group. Now, one last thing, if you haven't played on PrizePicks before, now is a fantastic time to join PrizePicks. They're doing a 100% instant deposit match on your first deposit. If you put in 20 bucks or if you put in up to 100 bucks, they're going to double your money instantly for free. All you have to do is use promo code Curry, like you see at the bottom of the video here at the banner, or I'll leave a link down in the description of the video. You can use that link to join as well. So they're doing an instant deposit match. And, I think it's a fantastic deal. It's a great time for you to join PrizePicks. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and start getting into some of the player props. We'll talk about the game totals and spread first. This one's got a 219.5 implied total here with Phoenix as the 5.5 point favorites at home. Now, the big question mark from this game, the thing that's looming over this game is if Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to play. He went from doubtful to questionable to being a game time decision. So we don't know Giannis Antetokounmpo's status for this game. So that is a huge, monumental, big old piece of news for you to keep an eye out on. If Giannis plays, that's going to shake things up dramatically for both sides, the Milwaukee side and the Phoenix side. So we got to stay tuned. As we get closer to game time, we should get some definitive news on Giannis Antetokounmpo's status. The spread 5.5 points, not looking like a complete and utter blowout. Obviously, if Giannis plays, I would expect that spread to shrink and become a lot more closer and competitive game. So as of right now, 219.5 points with a 5.5 point spread. So let's get into it. The props that we're going to discuss today are the ones that seemingly have the strongest odds out on the various sports books. So we're kind of using that as our guiding force today. The first one we're going to talk about is PJ Tucker of the Milwaukee Bucks and his points prop of 5.5 points. Now, 5.5 points, I have him projected to go under, and he is also a favorite to go under according to various sports books out there. So what I do is I go out, I dig and try and grab all the projections I can from various sites. I average them together, and the average I landed on was exactly 5 points. Put all this stuff in a spreadsheet. I upload it to Patreon to help you guys make better decisions. So that's one of the benefits of joining the Patreon group. But anyway, yeah, so PJ Tucker, if we look at his projection here on Number Fire, let's go ahead and scroll down. You can see they've actually got him even lower than 5. They got him at 4.8 points, which makes him a good candidate, a strong candidate to go under. So the first thing we're going to do is go over to NBA.com, totally free website. We're going to look at his regular season point per game average, which was 3.7 points per game, putting him well under 5.5 points. And, that's making me feel even more confident in this play with PJ Tucker. So at 3.7 points per game, the under's looking like a good way to go. Now we're going to look at his last 5 games and see how well he's been scoring the basketball. Now he doesn't take a lot of field goal attempts. Those attempts have gone up with Giannis going down. You can go back to his 5th game in his game log. Look at his field goal attempts. He attempted just 1 shot. Well, then it starts to rise here. 3, 7, 5, and finally 10 field goal attempts in his last game. Now, just because he's taking more field goal attempts doesn't necessarily mean that he's connecting on those field goal attempts. You could see his field goal percentage is pretty bad. 0%, 33%, 42%, 40%, and 20%. So looking at the points over his last 5 games, 1, 3, 8, 5, and 5. So he has only covered this points prop just 1 time in his last 5 games. So that's not a very good percentage. So from there, we're going to move on and we're going to look at how well he's done, his averages throughout the playoffs so far. He's appeared in 17 playoff games this season, 29 minutes per game, and he's averaging 4.4 points per game. Again, making us believe that the 5.5 points is just a little bit too high and that we should be looking to go under on this particular prop. So with that out of the way, we're going to move on to the next thing, and that is looking at his regular season matchups versus the Phoenix Suns. So we've already got that pulled up on NBA.com. NBA.com, by the way, fantastic site to do research on any of these stats. They got a pretty robust statistical system over there, totally free to go and do, so you could definitely check it out on NBA.com. Now, he faced Phoenix in 2 regular season games, played 21.4 minutes, so obviously his minutes are a little bit lower throughout the regular season. His minutes will be up, as we touched on before. But as you can see, didn't score very many points in those 2 matchups, averaging just 2.5 points against the Phoenix Suns in those 2 previous matchups. So with that out of the way, I wanted to take a look at some of the FanSure insights. Our friends over at FanSure, they do a fantastic job providing some scenarios, contextual insights, and things like that. So let's look at those real quick. I've got them off screen here. In his last 15 games against a top 10 defense, he has only covered 5.5 points 1 out of 15 times. That's just a 7% cover rate. That's good for just 3.1 points per game over that 15 game span. Also worth mentioning, versus opponents with winning percentages over 500 in his last 6 games, he has covered just 1 out of 6. That's good for a 17% cover rate, averaging 4.3 points per game during that period. And as I mentioned before, he's just 1 out of his last 6 games, covering 5.5 points, 17% cover rate. That's 4.3 points per game. So as you can see, guys, PJ Tucker's not doing a fantastic job of going over 5.5 points, which again makes me lean toward taking the under on PJ Tucker. Now we're going to wrap things up by looking at RotoWire here. We're going to go find PJ Tucker in this list of names, and you can see on various sports books here how they are stacking up on this 5.5 point prop. We've actually only got one sports book that has him up at 5.5 points. So at 5.5, he is a big -141 to go under 5.5 points. The other 2 books, they have him at 4.5, not 4.5. People are taking the over. So obviously between 4.5 and 5.5 lies 5 points. So it looks like he's setting up for about 5 points tonight. That's kind of where the different sports books have him lined up. So all in all, guys, all the information, all the research, you could see we do this together, leads me to believe that I should be taking the under on PJ Tucker in these 5.5 points. So with that one in the books, let's move on to the next prop that caught my eye, and that is another Milwaukee Bucks prop. This time we're talking assists, and we're talking Jrue Holiday at 8.5 assists. Now again, I have went out and I have done all the research and averaging and manually typing in, from different sites, all the averages for this particular prop, and I landed on a projection of about 8.2 assists for Jrue Holiday tonight. So let's go look at NumberFire and see where they have him. You can see they've got him up at 9.2 assists. So quite a big difference there. I've got him at 8.2 as an average across 4 different sites. NumberFire is a little higher on him at 9.2. So this could be one of those more volatile stats, one of those more volatile props tonight, where you're seeing, big differences, 9.2 on one site. He might be 7 on another site. So this could be one that's a little dicey, but let's dig in a little bit deeper here on Jrue Holiday. And look at his regular season numbers. You can see over the course of the regular season, 6.1 assists per game. That puts him well under tonight's prop of 8.5 assists, obviously. If we scroll down, we're going to look at his last 5 games here. Going back to the 5th game in his game log against the Atlanta Hawks back on June 25th, he drops 7 assists. Then he goes 12, 9, 13, and 9. So he has done a good job in his last 5 games of covering this assist prop of 8.5 assists. But this is a new series, a new team, a new challenge, a new foe here. So we're not sure how things are going to shake out. That's why we take a look at the playoff averages, the regular season matchups, and things like that. Speaking of playoff averages, let's go take a look now. He's appeared in 17 playoff games throughout this playoff run for the Milwaukee Bucks, averaging almost 39 minutes per game. You can see his assists per game are at 8.4, a slight under versus the 8.5 that he set up at PrizePicks for. So the under, again, definitely in play. Now we're going to move things over to his regular season matchups against the Phoenix Suns. We only have one matchup, but it's a pretty good sample size because he played 40.5 minutes in that one, which is probably right around the amount of minutes that he'll be logging tonight. 38 to 40 minutes, I would expect. And in that previous matchup against the Phoenix Suns, just 8 assists, which puts him under 8.5 assists, obviously. So I know it's not a large sample size. It's just one game, but 8 assists is less than 8.5. So far, so good on the under for Jrue Holiday. Now, I do have a couple of FanShore insights to definitely reference here. So we'll start with the first one. Versus top 10 defenses in his last 9 games, he is 8 out of 9 in covering 8.5 assists, meaning he has gone over 8.5 assists in 8 out of his last 9 versus top 10 defenses. That's a pretty high cover percentage, 89%, 10.7 assists per game during that span. Another thing worth considering is that against opponents with winning percentages over 500 in his last 4 meetings, he has covered 4 out of 4 times. That's 100%. And he's averaging 10.8 assists per game in that span. Another one worth mentioning, after the Milwaukee Bucks come off of a win, he is also for his last 4 at covering this prop, 100% cover percentage. That's 10 assists per game during that span. And last but not least, he's also 4 out of his last 4 games, 100%, averaging 10.8 assists per game. So he's been going over 8.5 assists, as you can see, in a wide variety of different scenarios. So this one, again, could be a little tricky. Yes, the projections seem to indicate the under. Yes, Vegas seems to like the under, but this is one of those ones where it could be a trap. Now let's go over to RotoWire real quick, and we're going to go take a look at the assist category. Find Jrue Holiday. He's at 8.5 assists across 3 different sports books. We got him as a minus 125 to go over, according to DK, a minus 115 to go under over on FanDuel, and last but not least, a minus 128 to go under over on BetMGM. So you've got 2 out of the 3 books who like the under. 1 of the books likes the over. So as you can see, a little bit of volatility here across the projections, across the different sports books. This one could be a little dangerous, so be careful. Be careful. All right, with that one out of the way, we're going to move to some Phoenix Suns player props. And the first one I want to talk about that caught my eye was Mr. Jae Crowder, who's at 5.5 rebounds today. Now, 5.5 rebounds, I, again, have went out and done the research, the averaging, and I've uploaded it into a spreadsheet, and that's what I'm referencing here off camera. I've got him at 5.2 rebounds, which is a projection that would suggest we should be leaning toward the under. So let's head back over to NumberFire and take a look at his projections there. Click the rebound column. And we go and we find Jae Crowder. He's at 5.3 rebounds. So again, according to NumberFire, leaning toward the under is the ideal way to go. So we're going to move on over here to NBA.com. As you can see, for the regular season, he averaged 4.7 rebounds per game, putting him under this 5.5 mark with ease. We're going to go down, look at his last 5 games and see how well he's been rebounding the basketball. We got him at 4 rebounds back on June 22nd against the Los Angeles Clippers, 6 boards, 7 boards, and then 4 and 5. So he's only covered 2 times out of his last 5 games at 5.5 rebounds. So with that one out of the way, let's move on over to the next statistic, and we're going to look at the playoff averages. 16 playoff games he's appeared in, playing over 31.5 minutes per game, and in those playoff appearances, 5.2 rebounds per game, which suggests that more often than not, he's closer to 5 rebounds per game than he is 6. So the under is definitely in play. All right, and now we're going to go look at the regular season matchups against the Milwaukee Bucks. He did face Milwaukee in 2 games this regular season. Now, he only played 28 minutes in those games. He's going to play more minutes tonight, 30 plus definitely on the board here for Mr. Jae Crowder. Now, against the Milwaukee Bucks, look at him crushing these rebounds. 8.5 boards in the previous 2 appearances versus the Milwaukee Bucks in the regular season. So, not a huge sample size, but definitely worth considering, worth noting that he was an absolute monster against the Bucks in their 2 previous regular season matchups. Now, we're going to look back over at FanShore. I've only got one insight to share with you on this 5.5 rebound prop for Jae Crowder, and that is at home in his last 6 home appearances, he's just 1 for 6 in covering this 5.5 rebound prop, suggesting that in his last 6 home games, he hasn't done a very good job at rebounding the basketball. That's just a 17% cover percentage, and he's averaging about 4 rebounds per game in his last 6 home games. So just throwing that out there, worth mentioning for sure. Now, last but not least, we're going to head back over to RotoWire. We're going to go to the rebound category here, and let's take a look at where they've got Jae Crowder today. They got him at 5.5 boards across 3 different books, minus 121 to go under, a minus 128 to go under, and finally a minus 120 to go under. So these aren't super strong odds, but you could obviously see that they're kind of in alignment here. They're all in agreement that the under at 5.5 rebounds is the way to go on Jae Crowder. So just laying it out there. You don't have to go with these picks. Maybe you feel a different type of way. Maybe you think he's going to crush the boards like he did in his 2 regular season matchups against the Milwaukee Bucks. But, you know, you kind of get an idea as we put all the numbers and all the different factors into play here, which way you should be going on Jae Crowder. And I think I'm leaning toward the under based on what I'm finding here. All right, so with that player prop out of the way, we're going to cap things off with 2 more Phoenix Suns player props. So that'll be 2 Milwaukee Bucks props and then a total of 3 props for the Phoenix Suns side of things. And then for these props, we're going to go look at some 3-point makes. First guy we want to talk about is CP3, Chris Paul, who's at 1.5 3-point makes. I've got him projected for 1.9, so really, really close to 2. He's got to make 2 or more, obviously, in order for you to cash tonight. So this is one of the props that had some of the strongest odds that I saw out of any of the props that we're going to discuss today. We don't have a projection on number fire for this one, so we can skip right over to NBA.com. Now, we're going to have to go down here and look at his last 5 games, see how well he's been shooting it from 3-point range in his last 5. You can see here against Denver back on June 13th, he did not attempt a 3-pointer. Now in this next game, he attempts 7, makes 2. That's a good cover there. That's an over. Then he goes 0 for 3 here, 0 for 6, and then finally 7 for 8. A truly fantastic performance. He drops 41 points to close out the Los Angeles Clippers, his former team. So he definitely caught fire, shooting 87.5% from 3-point range. Does he shoot 7 for 8 tonight? I highly doubt it. This is not a performance that we should come to expect going forward from Chris Paul. But as you can see, he does have that upside, those games where he can get hot from beyond the arc and absolutely crush his 3-pointers. Now let's go take a look at his regular season numbers real quick. We do that by clicking the stats category, change the season type from playoff to regular season. And you can see over the course of the regular season, he attempted about 3.7 3-pointers per game, making 1.5, which coincidentally is exactly where he's projected at on PrizePicks today. That's good for a 39.5 3-point field goal percentage. So pretty good field goal percentage, 3-point field goal percentage when you consider all things. So about 40%, man, that's a pretty good mark. So if he shoots, about 4 tonight, makes about 2 or, 1 or 2 of them, we should be in pretty good shape here. So he can definitely do it and get it done. All right, so we're going to go look at his playoff averages now. And during this playoff run, he's appeared in 14 games. He shot 3 3-pointers per game, making 1.2, which would make him a candidate to go under. So this is a little bit of a red flag here, a little bit of a knock against the over for Chris Paul in this 1.5 3-point field goal make. So 1.2 average obviously would put him under 1.5. Now let's go look at his regular season matchups against the Milwaukee Bucks, give us a little bit more insight here. And you can see that he faced the Bucks 2 times throughout the regular season, played over 35 minutes per game, and in those games he attempted over 5.5 3-pointers per game, and he made 3 out of those 5.5, good for a 54.5% 38% three-point field goal percentage. So that's an encouraging sign. So we had a little bit of a red flag. Now we've got a little bit of a green flag based on his regular season matchups against the Milwaukee Bucks. So with that in mind, we're going to move over to RotoWire now. I don't have any fan-sure insights for Chris Paul and his three-point makes, unfortunately, but we're going to go down to the three-point category. We've got him at 1.5 three-point makes across two different books here, and very strong action or odds on the over here on DK at -155 to go over 1.5 three-point makes. And again, pretty strong odds here as well on FanDuel, -138 to go over 1.5 three-point makes. So you got a decision to make. Do you ride with the public, who are heavily favoring Chris Paul making at least 2 3-pointers tonight, or do you go the other way and take the under, thinking Chris Paul might struggle? Tough call, but I think I would probably lean toward the over personally. All right, so with Chris Paul out of the way, we're going to cap things off by talking about his teammate, Mikal Bridges, who is at 1.5 three-point makes. Now, if memory serves me correctly, throughout this playoff run, he's been pretty consistent with knocking down 2 3-pointers, sometimes even more. So we're going to dig into Mikal Bridges and this player prop here and start things off by going back to NBA.com. So let's scroll on down here. We're going to look at his last 5 games. Now, he's kind of hit or miss. It's boom or bust with Mikal Bridges for the most part in his last 5 games. You can see he attempted 5 3-pointers, made just 1. That is not good enough to get the job done. But in the next game, he bounces back, attempting 5 once again, converting on 2 of those 5. That's a good cover. He goes no 3-point attempts in that game. Attempts just 2 3-pointers, makes 1 out of 2, and then attempts 1 in his final game against the Los Angeles Clippers, going 0 for 1. So his 3-point attempts in his last 3 games have really fallen off a cliff. But again, this is a different team, different matchup, different scenario here. Maybe things turn around for Mikal Bridges in game 1 here against the Milwaukee Bucks. So let's move over here and take a look at his playoff averages. Now, in 16 playoff appearances, he is attempting 4.6 3-pointers per game, making 1.6, which puts him slightly over 1.5, but not close enough to 2 for me to feel super comfortable here. But, it is an over, although a slight over. Anyway, that's good for a 35% 3-point field goal percentage. So if we change this from playoffs to regular season, we could take a look and see at how well he shot during the regular season. He went about 4 to 4.5 3-point attempts per game on average, making 1.9 3-point makes per game, which is really close to 2. That's where we need him to be tonight, just like Chris Paul. We need him to knock down at least 2 triples. So let's see in his regular season matchups against the Milwaukee Bucks if he, got 2 or more 3-point makes in any of those matchups. So we scroll on down here, you can see he's faced Milwaukee twice in the regular season, played over 36 minutes per game, so got plenty of run. He averaged 18 points per game, so that's very encouraging. Now, in those 2 matchups, he attempted 5 3-pointers per game, and he knocked down 4 out of 5. That's good for an 80% 3-point field goal percentage. No, that's not sustainable. No, I don't expect him to do that over the course of this series, but this does show you the potential, the upside for Mikal Bridges and the over on this 1.5 3-point prop. So we'll finally cap things off here by talking about some FanSure insights, and then we'll touch on RotoWire and look at the different Vegas odds for this prop. The first thing that I want to mention is that in his last 5 games facing opponents with winning percentages over 500, he has failed to cover in 5 out of his, he has failed to cover this prop in his last 5 games, going just 1 out of 5. That's good for just a 20% cover percentage, averaging 0.8 3-point makes per game in his last 5 against opponents with a winning percentage over 500. Another scenario to consider is that in his last 12 home games, he is 10 for 12 in covering this 1.5 3-point prop. That's an 83% cover percentage, averaging 2.5 3-point makes. So he shoots the ball pretty darn good from beyond the arc when he's at home. So that's a very encouraging sign. Now, in his last 5 games, he's just 1 for 5 in covering this prop of 1.5 3-point makes, going 0.8 average in his last 5. So that's a little bit discouraging. Hopefully he gets back on track against this Milwaukee Bucks team. So finally, we're capping it off, as I said, with the 3-point prop for Mikal Bridges. We're going to take a look at the various sports books here. They got him at 1.5 across 3 different books, and I'm seeing very strong odds for Mikal Bridges here. -162. He is a monster to go over, according to the folks over at DraftKings. -146 over on FanDuel, and finally a -143 over on BetMGM. These are some of the best and strongest odds I've seen out of any of the player props in today's video, so that is why I wanted to mention them, bring them up to you, and dig into some of the stats and research for Mikal Bridges and this 1.5 3-point makes. I'm not going to overthink this one. Probably just going to ride with the public here on this one and take the over and hope that he knocks down at least 2 3-point makes. That's going to do it for today's video. What do you guys think about the props that we discussed today? Are there any that you're really liking? Any that you're fading? Maybe there's one that I didn't get a chance to talk about. Leave it down in the comment section below. You might help me out. You might help somebody else out who tunes into these videos. Appreciate your interaction, your comments, your likes, your subscriptions, your notifications being turned on, all the things. I appreciate your continued support. Good luck tonight if you're playing over on PrizePicks. This is CJ. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.